Our first keynote of the morning, I'm really delighted to introduce, is Gary Muszynski. Gary is a musician and facilitator who has worked for more than 30 years with more than 100,000 leaders around the world. I had Paul Simon's Graceland playing when I walked in this morning, and it's not a coincidence. Gary is not only a world-class musician and an appreciator of music, but we had a run-in in the hotel lobby last night, and in the last week, he's seen and then been on backstage with both the Paul Simon farewell tour and the Joan Baez farewell tour. And when I think about the impact that music has culturally, we use this word culture to describe organizations and organization change, but actually culture means much more than that. And music is an inherent part of society and the fabric that brings us all together. Gary's going to be talking about music both as a metaphor and as that web, that fabric, and giving all of you an experience of what music can do to help groups gel. So without any further ado, Gary Muszynski.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome, Robin, and thank you for warming the audience up rhythmically. Very cool. So my name is Gary Muszynski. The last name is Polish for one who plays music while skiing, which is very difficult to do. I'm the CEO and founder of Orchestrating Excellence, and it's a boutique consulting firm devoted to bringing together neuroscience, what I call strategic play, coaching, and leadership development. I've been at it for 30 years. And have had the honor of working with, as Robin said, more than 100,000 people on 5 continents. So I'm honored to be here at the 3rd annual Responsive Conference. Yeah, what I wanted to talk to you about is really the transformative power of music, but specifically synchronization and harmony. Who would like to have a more synchronized and harmonious workplace and world? Right? So music can teach us so much about how to do that. And how many of you play music actively still in your life? Okay, we have about maybe 15%. How many of you sing in the car or shower? Wow, we've just boosted our metrics up considerably. So it's very interesting how we define what it means to be a creative person and how sometimes our own limiting self-definitions get in the way of, fully owning and claiming our creativity in a variety of different domains. Where I want to go today is to really have you shift your perspective of looking at music not just as a consumer or as an audience member, but looking at it as perhaps the most important way that you can help to unlock collective intelligence in your organization, whether you're a consultant or whether you're internal. So I've come to my work through 4 different doors, that of organizational change catalyst, executive coach, learning experience designer, and then also as a musician and visual artist. And, you know, early on, music took me, I had such a deep experience with music as a child that it really helped me transform who I was and who I could become. And I began to see the world through the eyes of music and through those concepts of harmony, synchronization, momentum, modulation, dissonance, all of the ways that music describes different phenomenon. And if you think about it, music is really our first language of collaboration, our first nonverbal language. So Orchestrating Excellence brings in a variety of different modalities and different research from different fields, but I see the catalyzing force being something that I like to call strategic play, which I'll share with you in terms of what that means to me. But basically it means using music making, improv, storytelling, visual strategy mapping, anything that helps to create more juice, engagement, aliveness, and insight. So let's look at what this idea is of the strategic play zone. So you have the comfort zone, right? Which to some extent after a while can be a place of disengagement or boredom because we like to be challenged. And then in the middle space we have the learning zone, the place of flow and play where time goes by very quickly and you're really engaged, you're using a lot of your creativity. And then all the way to the right, to your right, you have what I call the vortex, or the danger zone, right? This is a place that can trigger fight, flight, or freeze, or appease. Now the fascinating thing is that when we're trying to influence and lead people from the comfort zone to the learning zone, or in the field of trauma, it's referred to as the window of tolerance. What we're trying to do is increase people's window of tolerance for being with uncomfortable feelings. Because all change involves an emotional reaction. So here's the interesting thing. So when you're trying to move people into the learning zone, yeah, they're going, I don't know, this sure feels like the danger zone to me, right? We're wired to resist change, right? The brain likes homeostasis and predictability. So how do we work with this? So Michael Meade, who's a wonderful mythologist and storyteller, says that a community is a group of people sitting around a common inquiry. What a beautiful image of what a community is. And so I want to share a few of my inquiries with you. The first inquiry is, how can we help individuals and teams move from a rut to a groove? How can we unlock and harness the power of collective intelligence and harmony or coherence? How can we help leaders and teams create strategic play zones for prototyping new ways of learning, exploring, communicating, thinking, and co-creating? And finally, how can we increase skill with listening and complex communication, mindfulness and wellness, while also boosting productivity? So before I attempt to answer those questions, let's wake up our egg shakers here. Let's hear them. Okay, great. And so I'd like to invite you to synchronize your egg shakers together. So go ahead and start. Aha. It's starting to happen. Okay, wonderful. So go ahead and shake them. Cool. We'll come back to those in a little bit. So let's look at, I always find it useful to have this dynamic tension between what's our current reality, because if you can't agree on where you are as a team or an organization, it's pretty hard to change. It's kind of like going up to a ticket counter at the airport and going, I'm not sure what my departure city is, but I'd like to go to Orlando, right? So you got to figure out where you're starting from. So let's look at some data. So according to the last Gallup survey from December 2017, 85% of employees were not engaged or actively disengaged. The impact of that was $7 trillion in lost productivity. That's a big number. So if we look at what some of the causes of that might be, when I talk to my clients, they'll say things like, well, you know, we need to hire top talent. People are leaving really quickly. They're expecting a lot from us. When you talk to employees, they'll say, I'm really burnt out. There's no work-life balance. There's not a lot of role clarity. Things are morphing and changing. I've got change fatigue. There's a reorg every bloody 2 months, you know, things of this nature. And so we all know that that is part of the current reality that we're facing at work. And thank God that's why we have the Responsive Conference, right? It's one of the ways of providing solutions and new ideas and prototyping new ways of thinking. So I want to shift from that kind of macro view of our current reality back to our individual nervous system. So if we look at rhythm as perhaps the most important concept for wellness and flow, this pendulation between disengagement and boredom and engagement and aliveness, we could actually identify different unhealthy rhythms. And so there's rut, rush, dragging, stop, start, which is a form of arrhythmia. And this is my sound for unhealthy rhythms. It's kind of rattling, right? It's kind of jarring. Let's contrast that with healthy rhythmic states, which is activation, groove, chill, and sleep. Remember what sleep is? Okay, so we all need time to recharge, and that's something we're losing in this very stressful world. And here's my sonic equivalent for healthy rhythm. Thank you. Which do you prefer? Okay. So if you go to the nervous system, again, what we're trying to do is find this balance between disengagement or boredom, what is referred to as hypoarousal and hyperarousal, overactivation, overstimulation. Because either one, if it's just static, is a chronic and unhealthy situation. We want this. We can sprint, and I know sprint is a popular concept these days. We want to sprint for short periods of time, but we want to regenerate. So basically, just to boil this down, we want more signal or music and less noise in organizations and in the world. And so for me, signal music is synchronized and harmonic. It's coherent. It's organized. It's not disjointed. It's not siloed. It's well designed and well executed. And disorganized and jarring would be the summation for what we want to reduce. So I want to start shifting back to music and how we actually bring it into organizations. So Otto Scharmer at MIT, who's an organizational theorist, says that what we need to create the future of work is co-sensing, co-presencing, and co-creating. And so with our strategic play work, we help people co-sense by creating visual strategy maps of their current reality and their future. And basically, it's visual scenario planning to help them visualize different possibilities. And then also, he talks about deep listening and connection to authentic presence and collective creativity. And finally, co-creating, which has to do with hands-on prototyping to explore new ways of operating ideas and norms. And this is a shot from something that we did for the Dropbox executive team a few weeks ago. And in all of their planning, they didn't think about composing how they wanted to be as an executive team. What were the qualities of how we're going to be together to model this change for the rest of the organization? So we asked them to compose an original piece of music from scratch in an impossibly short period of time, using strange percussion instruments from around the world. And this woman, who is the head of communications, has never played a flute before in her life. And our flute player was there, and she picked up his penny whistle and just started wailing on it. And it actually sounded pretty good. We were all like shocked. It's like, wow, that is so cool. You had the guts to do that. And you can see that we asked them to design the qualities that they wanted to embody as an executive team and model for the rest of the organization. So we're going to kind of fast forward through the brain a little bit. The brain is a pattern-making machine. It likes predictability. And music is actually a superfood for the brain in that it lights up more regions of the brain than any other activity. There are more connections across the corpus callosum, the center point of the brain, to create connections between the left and right brain. And it integrates both spheres of the brain. And it basically, once you take what it does to the brain and do that in a precise way with a group of people with specific strategic parameters around strategy and execution or leadership, or shifting from hierarchical leadership to collaborative leadership, something really amazing happens. And there was a wonderful blog that came out last year by my colleague Srini Pillai at Harvard Business School, about who's a neuroscientist, also happens to be an accomplished piano, about how music helps leaders and teams synchronize their brain waves and basically model the behaviors and thinking for agile innovation. So I want us to wake these up again. And this time, I would like for you to follow me, and we're going to all synchronize as a group again. 1, 2, ready, and. So listen to the whole. There you go. So that's a lot more coherent. Do you feel that? Yeah. So, and you could say this thing with me that really helps. Boom shaka laka laka, boom shaka laka laka, boom shaka laka laka, boom shaka laka. Boom. Awesome. Okay. Now, for some reason, boom shaka laka laka brings a smile to anyone's face all over the world. It is universally translated. So I'm going to show you, share with you a video of 120 IT leaders at McKesson through an activity that we created called the rock passing game. And it's really a game about exploring interdependence, change, chaos, and resilience. So we're going to learn to play as a unified ensemble in a very short period of time. I don't mean just play, I mean sound tight.
I look at how we began the whole workshop with a lot of cynical people, very disconnected. And at the end, we were very literally in harmony.
What do you think would be the barriers to our success in achieving that? It's a talent. Okay. Attitude. You're all engineers. Desire. Fear. Lack of confidence, or your lack of confidence of our own abilities. Okay. Here we go.
The experiential learning starts with the rock game, a first-hand lesson in why teamwork matters. Watch what happens when this team breaks down and the rocks pile up.
One, two, ready, and stop. All right. So, Doug, those are a lot of rocks you got there. 7, yeah.
You just saw how rapid change, confusing roles, and lack of cooperation can derail any team effort.
I'm just curious what you observed that happened around you in the rock game.
Well, the pile of rocks ended up where they ended up, but that doesn't mean that's where the problem started.
Aha!
We need to look at the problem, not the end result.
Wow, I like that. This is the rock game. We're going to graduate from rocks to musical instrument. Okay. So let's just look briefly at the lessons they learned in that funny game. The first is around rehearsing cognitively, emotionally, and viscerally for 3 kinds of change: anticipated change, emergent change, and chaotic change. So leaders get to actually experience what change is like. And you see different strategies. Some people are passing their pile of rocks to the next person. We call that creative delegation. Other people are sweating bullets trying to figure out how they manage. Some people are rallying their team members and working together to make it work. Other people are absolutely oblivious. It's a fascinating example. Secondly, it's revealing the current team dynamics. So it's actually a diagnostic process. So if you're collecting surveys or doing data, it's also interesting to compare that with the actual diagnostic of how a team performs in the room and compare the two. Thirdly, there's a new understanding that they gain of breakdowns, the need to pause and the ability to resynchronize. And finally, shifting from blame to accountability, because the first thing that happens is that people start finger pointing and say, Joe clearly has the pile of rocks, he created the problem. And they're learning the difference between planning and execution, right? The messiness of that. So you noticed that when I asked you to synchronize your egg shakers this last time, it was much tighter, right? Yeah. So that required an act of orchestration. So people understand music, synchronization, teams. Yes, I get it. But music can also teach us a lot about leadership and 3 specific ways of leading. Leading through acts of orchestration or orchestrating, which is about being directive. Collaborating, which is about facilitating and coaching. And improvising, which is about adapting in the moment. So if you look at these 3 ways of leading as a palette of possibilities in terms of agility, you can see that at times we need to orchestrate, at times we need to collaborate, and at times we need to improvise. Just in closing, I want to share a bit of ROI that we've achieved, just so you get an idea of the power of how these concepts can build through an organization. when we worked with Cisco's IT division, they created a new global shared service team. And basically, after going through one of our leadership development programs, using music and strategic play, they were able to cut their implementation time by 2 months. It just accelerated, got everybody on the same page, less conflict, shared agreement, shared mindset, much faster implementation. At Chase, they brought us in to work with everyone in global treasury, 600 people. After three mergers and acquisitions really, in a 3-year period. And so there were 3 different cultures attempting to merge, a lot of conflict, a lot of misunderstanding. And we were able to help them improve their employee satisfaction scores by 20% after 1 year. Now, we've worked with some amazing creative companies like Apple, Disney, and Pixar. I had the honor of personally working with the original Pixar Cars story team. I mean, this is like, a dream job or client. And they were already incredibly high functioning, right? Some of the most brilliant creative minds in the world. But what we help them do is figure out when we're in a rut in terms of creative ideas, how do we get into a groove? So we help them to develop a set of practices that they would go through to free up their creative energy. And finally, at B of A, we worked with the head of global IT for a 3-year period and cascaded a common experience throughout his division. And he credited us with helping him grow from a $90 million profit center to $170 million in 3 years in a flat growth business. And he said, we brought in McKinsey, we brought in Deloitte, and we couldn't do what you helped us do. And I said, explain that to me. How is that possible? And he said, we needed to have a shared mindset around change because my leadership team did not believe that we could accomplish what we needed to do financially. And until they got to that place emotionally, we couldn't get them to budge. So I hope you could see why I feel so strongly about music as a very unique viewpoint on the world, and particularly in terms of organizational change, leadership, team development, and of course resilience and wellness as well. Just in closing, I'd like to say that in terms of this idea of unlocking creative intelligence or collective intelligence, then music can be used as a metaphor, as a framework, as a set of organizing principles, and also as a somatic experience to help people shift. So the key insight I want to leave you with is that people rarely change through data alone. To influence the hearts and minds of those whom you lead, provide emotionally resonant experiences, meaningful conversations, and inspiring stories to paint the way forward. Love to stay in touch with you. I'll be here the next 2 days. I'm looking forward to many conversations about what it means to create a responsive organization. And check out the videos on our website. I'm just going to close with a final piece of music. So I invite you to listen as you're having conversations over the next 2 days to people you haven't met before. What would it be like if you actually listened to someone as if they were uttering music from their mouths? You had no idea what they were going to say next. You weren't thinking about, I agree with that, or I disagree with that. but you're just listening in curiosity. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.